Hello, my name is Meerah, and I'm a Lorekeeper in one of Yogg-Sthos libraries, and today I wanted to share with you the story of Yolu, the architect of Yolunakea, the forest biome of Atoraxxion. The earliest memory I can recall, it's daytime in the market. I approach strangers that fill my empty belly with only kind words and sympathetic glances. I spend the night in a musky, shady place where no stars can shine. But it's fine. When the day comes, the sun will shine again in this dark place. Maybe someday even my worthless life will be saved. Not long after, a man miraculously appeared in front of me. That man that introduced himself as Dekia promised me an eternal day. As for me, who had only ever lived, nay survived, on a day-to-day basis, he gave a mission. Why did Master choose me? The pressure, rather than driving me to succeed. I find it suffocates me. Whenever the pressure overcame me, I would go to see Vaha. He was so busily devoting his time to researching the mission that he neglected his appearance, which was scruffy, to say the least. For someone who wished to accomplish something so grand, he sure didn't look the part. How silly of him, to completely stop caring for himself like that. Seeing him somehow made me feel better about myself. Master told Ors and I to head to the rugged lands. Depending on the threat imposed by the Fortress of the Dark Invaders, unbearable heat or dark chilly nights may await us during the last day. Because of that, in order to advance our strongholds, it was necessary that we sufficiently examine and research various environments. I was afraid of being left alone in the outside world again, but I was also somewhat excited to be able to see living, breathing creatures again, and to be free of my mundane life. Master visited me before he left for the world outside. I was unsure if I'd do well. He laughed and encouraged me. My dearest Yolu, when the time comes, mystical stones called light stones will be laid out for you. You are the one who will lead the future. Therefore, for the sake of our future, please devote yourself to the research of those stones. And when I return to this stronghold, I will conduct research together with Ors and you. You know what? I'm actually glad that I'll be accompanied by Ors rather than Vaha or Sika. This may be an opportunity to get to know her better. Yolunakea was a land lush with greenery that resembled a paradise. Although plants covered everything as far as the eye could see, the blessings that had touched this land implied many countless living creatures inhabited the region. While I was following the smell of soil, I came across creatures that were half my height. They were surprised by the sight of a stranger and hid themselves behind a tree, but when they saw that I wasn't a threat, they slowly emerged and approached me. Small creatures surrounded me, dancing and chanting words I couldn't understand the meaning of. When I listened carefully, it seemed that all their sentences ended in ol and lun, so I decided to call them the Olans. The Olans were wonderful creatures, dancing and singing all day long in the lush forest beneath the trees. Guided by the Olan, on the way to their homeland, I discovered a mysterious stone that seemed to emit a light of its own. Perhaps this is what Master had been referring to. As I touched the light stone, I could feel a flood of energy rushing into my hands. But as I was looking at the light stone, an Olan grabbed me and muttered something. It sounded as if they wanted me to stop, so I put the light stone down. This was met with what seemed to be a collective sigh of relief. I'll have to get a closer look in the evening when the Olan aren't watching. I lived with the Olan for many years, learning about their customs and language to carry out more research on the Lightstones. I came to realize why it was so difficult to find terrestrial life in the luscious forest. It was because of a great creature, Lovecraft, drew breath beneath the ground of Yolunakea. When I asked for a more detailed explanation, the Olan took hold of a tree branch. Since they communed with the creature in its slumber beneath the ground using the branch, it wouldn't have been hard to get an idea of how it looked, but the picture they drew of Lexaous resembled a giant rock-like figure. After many years had passed, I regretted having to go back to my biome, as I had thoroughly enjoyed my journey. But a terrible incident occurred shortly after. There was a giant lightstone shining brightly in the water. I was so struck by the sight of it that I reached in quickly to retrieve it, only to find myself frozen solid as a rock. Then many more lightstones rose to the surface of the water, and I locked eyes with a giant creature swimming in the water's depths. It was an alligator, with what appeared to be a crown of lightstones upon its head. With one violent swing of its tail, I was sent sprawling down the side of a cliff. If Ors didn't find me, I would have ended up in this alligator's stomach, never to return to the stronghold. My conscience faded in and out, and the only thing I saw clearly was Ors breathing heavily. Ors, how did you find me here? I couldn't speak a single word from pain in my back, but she just gazed into my eyes and said, "The Dark Goddess told me everything." I had a pretty clear image of everyone and how they looked before I left for the outside world, but perhaps it was the vast time apart that had caused the faces of the other Decimos to change so. The sun shone brightly on Vaha, and the lines of his face seemed bolder than before. Nevertheless, he didn't in any way appear attractive. I must finish the thread before the next full moon rises, but I can't think of anything. I was stuck in my own head. Then Vaha and Sika both invited me to their own spaces, each offering assistance. Is there any clearer evidence that I will, in fact, be the center of the coming future? When I arrived at Vaha's stronghold, there was no other way to describe it other than perfect. The threads were woven so elaborately, and the weapons appeared as if they were breathing, so lifelike. My mouth dropped. What came to mind was the sun in Yolunakea. It lit up the day and shone light on all living things. What could he have possibly seen in the outside world that had inspired him to design such a place? Vaha. I see him in a different light now. Eventually, I reached Sika's stronghold, and I could not help but be disappointed. His weapons looked a lot like Vaha's weapons, but they didn't work properly. The unorganized threads somehow resembled what the inside of Sika's mind might look like. Why is it that Sika is constantly comparing themselves to Vaha? Couldn't he just acknowledge Vaha and continue his own research one step at a time? It was hard for me to understand, and I didn't want to bother trying, but I couldn't help but worry a little. He'd become so grim since returning from the outside world. I thought of the light I saw in the stronghold of the sun, and I handed over some light stones to Sika. Poor Sika, what would he do without me? Since giving the light stone to Sika, he's been coming around a lot more. Sika's eyes fluttered with every glance he stole at me, utterly love-struck. I was certain when I looked at those vibrant eyes that Sika was completely mine. Yes, make him long for the daylight, deep in that abyss where light cannot reach. Just like a weapon that I made and controlled, you will become my hands and feet. After receiving disastrous marks from Master, I assured him that I would be able to make the perfect device to move the giant ancient weapon. And yet, with my research on lightstones also faring poorly, I was stuck pondering at how to get myself out of this situation. While thinking of a solution, Vaha's stronghold, inspired by the sun, suddenly came to mind, and I promptly headed over to his biome. Can you help me? I asked Vaha. But even before I had finished speaking, Vaha began to help without a moment's hesitation. Then he stayed up for 10 whole days and nights without even stopping to eat or sleep. He just continued making devices. He's working this hard, all for me. It made my heart race. When Vaha went back, I held on to make the weapon. Thus, I checked his steps one by one, brooding over how he was making this special device. For the last 3 days, I've been tossing and turning with the thoughts of Vaha. I couldn't stand it anymore, so I went to see Ors at her stronghold. Before we left for the outside world, Ors and Vaha were lovers. I wanted to see if their relationship remained unchanged. But Ors didn't appear to be in a right frame of mind. The line of dark goddess statues made that quite evident. Okay, it's perfectly fine to serve a god, but why do you continue seeing Vaha when he treats you as he does? If it were me, I would do so much better. Couldn't think straight after stealing Ors' dagger. Was this my opportunity to tear apart Vaha and Ors' relationship? If Vaha discovered that Ors was worshipping a god, I'm sure that he would be absolutely devastated. Should I tell him myself? No. There has to be another way. A way to let Vaha find out about the Dark Goddess. Yes, that's it. My dear Sika, you should take action. I visited Ors' stronghold and told her she could tell me anything that was on her chest. She hesitated for a while, then began to speak with a timid voice about the Dark Goddess. I listened to her talk day after day, passing no judgment whatsoever. Ors, this secret will stay between you, me, and the Dark Goddess. All truth will turn a blind eye beneath the cold moonlight. In doing this, neither Vaha, Sika, nor even Ors will ever doubt me again. I visited Sika's biome today, instead of Ors, and I told Sika, who looked elated by my surprise visit. What should I do, Sika? I had a gift for you, but I left it behind in Ors' biome. Now, the weapon, which is fully within my grasp, will move on its own. Haha. The next day, Vaha made new rules. All Dekimas must combine their strength when the Dark Invaders are upon us. All Dekimas must preserve the knowledge they acquire from Atoraxxion and guard its secrets. All Dekimas must respect each other's biomes and never enter without permission of their respective overseers. All Dekimas must refrain from developing personal feelings for any other Dekima. I couldn't stop laughing. Vaha, I know why you weren't in a good mood this morning. Fine. I've already got Sika wrapped around my finger anyway. Is this not true, genius? You still not understand, Vaha? Only I am fit to stand beside your blinding sun. It was on a day when the full moon illuminated the night sky that I decided today was the day. Certainty and hesitancy went back and forth in my mind with every step I took towards Vaha's stronghold. When my resolution started to waver, I reflected on the words inscribed upon Ors' blade. I whispered to Vaha, my love Vaha, with the Goddess of Darkness's permission, our paradise will be complete. It was the first time that I had seen Vaha's eyes, usually so stoic, flutter in confusion. I gazed straight into those eyes and whispered, you will never have Ors. She has already been embraced by the goddess. The thicket covers the light. The thorns scar everything they touch. Within this dark and damp place, only death blooms. But I am different. I can embrace all of the sunlight. With the sunlight, life will bloom and live harmoniously. It is I who can lift you up like the sun. Seek came looking for me. I have no idea how he knew what happened last night, but his eyes were filled with rage. The calm sea has now become a tidal wave. Sika, don't get upset. You're much more than just a friend to me. When the tidal wave began to settle, he laughed in a way I've never heard and said, "So you've determined I'm not completely lacking when compared to Ors then." Sika's face had emotions that words could not describe. After the night when the moonlight swallowed the sun, Vaha came looking for me like a starved man seeking food. It was easier to count the days when Vaha didn't come to my forest. Whenever I see him leave after stepping into my forest burdened with worries, and then watch as he rushes back with his crazed eyes, I feel ecstasy flowing through me. Now Vaha is completely mine as well. I was sure after seeing the weapons that Vaha sent, following Sika, I have now also won over Vaha's heart. Unlike Sika's weapons that lumbered around his biome, Vaha's weapons moved with flawless fluidity, like the weapons in my stronghold. I then paired Vaha's weapons with mine, making them train together, something that Ors, that was won over by the goddess of darkness, could not even imagine. And Ors. Wait, why am I thinking about Ors all the time? That thought alone upsets me. The day of the final battle. I wonder why my feet led me to Valmalkia. It was completely empty. Of course he'd be the first one out. As I was turning to leave, an imposing weapon caught my eye. It was Lucretia, the same name the goddess calls Ors by. Vaha had sculpted this idol of Ors without my knowledge. Since when? Perhaps I could forgive him for this. However, he must pay for wounding my heart. I will not engage. He will have to face them without me. Vaha, may you realize just how desperately you need me. That day, a shower of dark invaders fell from the sky, but the fall of Atoraxxion was not because of the dark invaders. Vaha erased the master's memory, and Sika was suspected to be the one who stole the Blackstone. Sika most definitely blamed Ors. Then Vaha was quick to try to protect Ors. It never mattered that Ors worshipped the dark goddess in the first place. I was able to face Vaha in a calmer manner than I thought. The invaders exposed the true you, and you are no longer my idol. Well, it seems pretty clear that you, Vaha, are trying to put us at fault for the troubles you had with the Dark Invaders. Sika and Vaha were stunned with my brutal honesty, and Vaha stood by Ors' side, choosing her as the Decima who will prove his innocence. I have done everything that I could with your heart, Vaha, but it led to nothing. What was left of me? I lost everything. Have nothing. I felt a cold rage boil up inside of me. It was in that moment, Vaha, who had been so righteous in his entire life, swung the sword with extreme rage. It pierced through the very center of Talabre's door, as it made a loud noise and shattered into pieces. There is no way for us to defeat the Dark Invaders. I'd rather we die side by side. Was I blinded by my desperation to reach the sun? It was as if everything had been burned away until not even ash remained. No, this wasn't my fault. Vaha is the reason my future ended up like this, and Dekia who promised me that tomorrow would come, and you who set fire to that hope-filled future. I am not the incompetent one, you are. Everything had come to an end. Nevertheless, Dekia, who had already lost all of his memories, began explaining the mission to me. It was just pure nonsense at that point. I just poured out my anger onto him. Why? You predicted the Dark Invaders. Why couldn't you predict our future? It's all your fault. You entrusted me with a future that you couldn't even promise. All I was left doing was running around trying to fill that void. You said I was the center of the future. If I had all in my hands, this wouldn't have happened in the first place. All this is your fault. Never because I was insufficient. And that's where Yolu's record ends. The drama, am I right? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time here in the library.